this is my persuasive speech, and here's my audience. Okay. So about a couple weeks ago, I was talking to a 6th grade student at work, and he was sharing with me about how he moved here and kind of a little bit about his family history and everything. He started by telling me that he moved to America 3 years ago from Mexico. And he moved here because of the violence and because of cartels and drug issues within his city. Before he got to that point of explaining that part of his history, he was showing me pictures of his town, Juarez. And he showed me specifically this picture right here, which has these beautiful mountains in the background. And this picture of a cathedral, which I thought was beautiful with the blue sky and the clouds. And I kept saying, bonita, bonita, and he kept saying, no, no, and I thought he was just being a 6th grade boy who didn't think that anything was pretty except for video games. But then he started to explain to me that there were drogas, which are drugs, and there were bad men who would force 12-year-old boys to carry their drugs for them. And he just told me about how terrible it was and how many issues that he had growing up. And that's why he's here. This boy is not the only one that has a story like this, though. If we looked around, we would see that there's a lot of people that live in our towns now that have similar stories to this 6th grade boy. There are 68.5 million people worldwide who have been displaced from their homes due to persecution, violence, and human rights violations. This number does not even include the 11 million undocumented immigrants who've come across our border. James 1:27 says, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after the orphans and the widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." I know many children who have stories just like this student. They've had to uproot their lives so that they can be safe and that their families can survive. We all see the news and we all see the stories of families and more recently minors who have been coming across the border as well, looking for a better life and for safety. We as Americans have the wealth, freedom, and abilities to help these families, women, and children. Americans need to do everything they can politically, financially, and relationally to care for the orphans, widows, and children who are immigrating to America to search for a better life. Americans need to step up because God calls us to. We have the financial abilities, and these are lives that matter and people who are just seeking for safety. God calls us to this in a specific place in the Bible. James 1:27, like I said earlier, he tells us to care for orphans and widows in their distress. C.S. Lewis has said that, and out of that hopeless attempt has come nearly all that we call human history: money, poverty, ambition, war, prostitution, classes, empires, slavery. The long, terrible story of man trying to find something other than God, which will make him happy. If we don't step up and help them, the U.S. will continue to fall further away from God if we don't step up to his calling. While it's not only morally possible for us to help these women and children and families, but it's also financially possible for us as well too. This doesn't have to come in the form of welfare or more and more organizations and federal funding, but it could come in the form of private schools that help teach these people English, teach them our laws, help them find jobs, get children into school systems, and help them to learn just our society in general. This year, a $4.047 trillion bill was discussed for discretionary spending. If we took just $1 million of that dollars away, then we would have enough to fund one of these schools for a whole year. These families are also escaping rogue governments and cartels who are extremely dangerous. The Congressional Research Database has discovered that cartels are closely linked to drug trafficking, money laundering, and many other violent crimes. They traffic heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, marijuana, and also opioid fentanyl. Mexico alone last year saw over 29,000 murders. These included beheadings, public hangings, car bombs, murders of dozens of journalists and government officials. If we could save hundreds of these families, why wouldn't we? If we act with compassion and mercy, just as God would, then we can help these people, and the United States can step up to God's calling on us. While this is a touchy subject and can make a lot of people uncomfortable, and it is related to politics, which also makes a lot of people uncomfortable as well, if we put a name to this issue, if we can say that I know somebody who has dealt with this problem and we can personalize the issue of immigration, then it'll become a more real topic for us, and we will want to show that love and mercy to these women and children who are coming across our borders.